Um, Hello, hello. You have to bear with me with the minor technical difficulties just to start with. I'm still learning how to do all of this, but good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I'm Sigma, and this is Gestalt Experience Design. And so, for those of you who are relatively new to the channel, let me give you a little context. I'm what you would refer to as a experienced designer, although recently I've been working more in a UX engineering capacity, and so you'll be seeing some content related to that. So this channel overall is about experience design, quality software engineering, and business case studies. But those are for the videos itself that I post. Um, the live streams are a different story. The live streams are an opportunity for all of you to get to know me a little bit, get to know my process, get some spoilers on the on the videos because they do take quite a while to come out, and it's very much a learning process for me as well. And so the first week I have 4 streams planned. You're watching one of them right now, and it's going to be just focused on the projects. But in coming up streams or coming up weeks, I may introduce some more one-off streams in between that are study streams. And I don't mean academic study, but because I'm trying to improve my skills as a artist, I'm trying to improve my skills as a 3D modeler and improving my skills as a um, animator, in addition to relaying all this information that I pick up through my job to everybody here. I may do steady streams where I will give myself certain assignments and um, just have at it, try to learn something. And so this past month, I've been trying to improve my art style because I think I could do a lot more than I did in the past. And let me just show you what I mean. Some of you may be familiar with one of my earlier videos. Optimization without measurement is by default, by definition, premature. And so this is more of a art style that I was going for at the time. And it's not the best. It'll make it up on the fridge, but there's more I could do. So I then tried to improve it with my next video, which was a video about the cumulative layout shifts. And you can see it's considerably better. Um, and this was one of those efforts where I was trying to get some animation feel to it, but I didn't want to go through the effort of building out an entire animation sequence using something like Blender at that time. But that's what I'm planning on doing for the next one. So this upcoming video is called CSS set good OKRs. And what this particular video is about setting good objectives and key results. Um, and this is something that I had to do over the last month because at work we were standing up a new team and we needed to set some kind of measurement that our team would be held accountable to. And we could then um, do whatever we needed to in pursuit of those goals. And this is a summary slash recap of the things that I've learned from doing so. Now, this particular project introduction is going to be a little bit different than the normal project introductions in upcoming streams, and that is because we're starting in the middle. Um, and how my workflow is I'm just going to pull up Notepad here and see here. So with any project, I normally start out with just dumping all of the ideas that I have on the page in Notepad, just get everything out. So, and you can see that right here. I usually do this in Microsoft Word, but it's Notepad today. And we're just hitting on a couple of main points like making smart goals. And then I decided I'm just gonna toss that idea because everybody's gone through making smart goals at least once, and that's not really the point of this video. This video is more geared towards user experience, and I feel like the topic is a little bit more generally applicable to any new team that's coming up. And so I oriented the content that way. And so what I'm looking at is what are some of the questions that I was asking myself as I was doing this. Uh, this being setting those OKRs. And so I came up with five. And I think they're pretty reasonable. Setting up a baseline for data, looking at is there any rigor in our process? Like, how firm are we about doing things? Do we know exactly what we're doing? How do we avoid stagnation? And this is something that I think about in general um, because humans are naturally growth oriented. So we should be thinking about how we as an individual grow and how we work with others. And that's where the fourth point comes in is how do we help others grow with us? And the final point being just the ethics of it all. Because I was reading this very interesting book a while back. My sister sent it to me as a present, and it was about ethical design. Um, and it it revolved around the concept that us as designers can do a lot of harm if we are not careful about what we're doing. and how we're putting forth those designs. And that's even more relevant today. You hear all these stories about companies like Facebook um, getting into a bit of hot water because of some of the decisions that they made behind the scenes, and we're not too old too jazzed about it. So after this initial brain dump, I just get everything out on the paper, and then I go back and just think about, okay, what's the general flow that I'm looking for, and then I just start wrapping that all up into a script. And I'm not even thinking about visuals right now. I'm just thinking about, if I were to be asked to explain this to somebody, how would I go about explaining it? And I can wave my hands all I want, but my words have to carry some weight. That's what I'm focusing on over here. Once I have a pretty good feel for how I want to communicate the topic, I go back through and think about the visuals, which you saw a little bit earlier. I'm just setting up the different scenes and deciding how to block out the video so it's visually interesting while communicating the content. Um, and so these are just a little parentheses in here. I call them storyboards, but there's no illustration to accompany them. Um, Once I've done that, I'll get right onto the illustration and I'll bring up Clip Studio again. And so, looking at this particular content, I thought about the different frames that I wanted to put into play. And I figured this would be a good opportunity to try out the new art style, make it more visually interesting. So I'm working on different backgrounds and different compositions. And here's one of them. And here's the second one that I'm working on. Now, right now, I'm a little bit blocked on making people. I still need to practice my gesture drawing and constructing human figures to place in those backgrounds. I could do backgrounds all day. I like them, they're fun, but making the person blend into that background, that's a little bit harder. So there's this, and I'm just calling it good enough because the the enemy of good is perfection. So I can't let myself get too wound up about it, and I want to provide this wonderful content to you guys. Yeah, I don't feel like it's fair for me to constantly refine, and release a video in like 6 months from now when I'm finally satisfied. I want you guys to know about all of this. So that's where we're going. And let me see here. Um, yep. So that's just the overall background on this project. And what I'll be doing from here is just going through the process of building out some scenes. So going back to Notepad here, I'm just reading through what we have right now. And so I have the first frame, which you saw, and there are some areas where it's not so interesting. It's just text on the screen, maybe a couple of icons, but we may as well just start with one of those to warm up a little. So it'll be this line right here. So let's go ahead and take that down, and I'm just going to start a new folder. Okay. So, very first thing that I do, I just start off with a nice base of a little bit of off white, and then we'll just keep adding layers on top. So, the first thing is a ring chart. Pick a color from here, and we want to roughly divide this screen in three. So switch over to my pencil brush here. And by the way, this canvas is a standard 1920 pixel by 1080 pixel canvas. So it's the perfect size for a YouTube video. Um, so roughly divide this into three. Shrink that a little. Yeah, I love taking notes directly on my canvas. I just stick them in a separate layer, and then once I'm done with them, I'll just get rid of it. And one thing that I might do for future streams is find a nice lo-fi background music to drop on the video. That way, you can enjoy the music while I'm working. Um, some people might wonder, why am I doing this in almost grayscale? And this is just a get things done philosophy for me. I might do things in color when I'm initially developing them. Just that way I get a good idea of the values. So for example, just gonna bring up this screen right here, and this layer right here, all of this brick that you're seeing on the ground is actually a grayscale layer. So if I turn on the color there, you'll see it's just a whole bunch of random colors that I saw in brick patterns. Playing around, pick random colors from a list and apply them. Then once it turns grayscale, you get a nice variation in value for those bricks. So I'll get back here. So this particular frame is about quality score, velocity, and predictability. Um, there's lots of ideas that I could have about doing a quality score. I mean, I've thought of things like doing a USDA quality stamp like they do on meat, but that would be a little bit weird. So I started thinking about dashboards and ring charts for its scoring, kind of like Lighthouse, the web inspector tool that can run a report on your application and give you back a score. We'll often do it in the form of a ring chart. So I'll just get on this layer here. And just pencil things in to start with. Pick a different color, put this on a different layer, put that right underneath my pencil, and switch over to my gel brush and just fill it in. I have this funny tool that I use for filling in certain shapes, but I'm just gonna go with the old reliable lasso fill and uh, clip studio paint. I'm gonna say right there should be good. Just fill in some of the gaps, then switch to my pencil. That looks like about 66%. So I'm just gonna say increase this size here a little. And increase the overall size of these two layers. There we go. Would it look alright without the outline? That's something I gotta ask. And I don't feel like it is. So I'm just gonna add that back and um, make a new layer for a formal outline. Just taking my sweet time here. I'm drawing on a Galman PD 1560. By the way, I I've gotten into graphics tablet this year, and I really like it. It's quite the upgrade from my MS Paint days, where I had a little Wacom tablet that you had to stare at the screen and try to match up your hands too. Um, so having a screen that you draw on, it's pretty nice. All right, so there's that. And then the Burndown Chart, and this is something that we do quite a bit in at work, and we're all using Jira at work, and so they provide a Burndown Chart, and essentially what a Burndown Chart is, you have a certain number of tasks for a particular sprint. So let's say you had so to provide further context, these tasks are assigned points, and so you have a certain number of points, and the points are one, um, three, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and up. And so you would just for each of these, the task would be pointed based on the complexity of that task. So something that's pointed as 1 is trivial, could be done in like 15 minutes. And then something like 13 might take a good chunk of the 2-week sprint cycle for Agile. Um, where was I going with this? Yeah. So you take the task that you committed to doing for that 2 weeks sprint cycle. It could add up to something like 45 points per 2 week. And so you'll start off with that 45 points, and there's a chart in Jira called the Burndown Chart, which we're working on right now, and it's a plot of the expected completion time of all of the pointed tasks against how productive are you really being. So a straight line is the normal burn down. How much work are you getting done? And then you have the variations where you might be getting some things done, you might be getting blocked on something. In real life, it doesn't quite look like that unless you're pulling in additional projects for no reason. So we're not going to use this precisely. I'm just going to clean that up. Add a new layer. Make sure I'm getting rid of the right thing. That's one of the common things for an artist. It's like that scene from Emperor's New Groove where Yzma and Kronk are making their way to the lair, and they get to this point where you have to pull a lever to get into the lair, and Kronk pulls the wrong one. I do this all the time. It's wrong layer, Kronk. So I always check which layer I'm working on by changing the visibility. And so just going to be real simple here. And thicken those lines up a little. in Jira, the different lines are usually in two different colors. So I'm just gonna put my axis down first. Um, Point and time. So let's start with a relatively lighter color for the normal, and then slightly darker color for the project itself. There we go. Okay, on to the third item, and that would be predictability. This one is interesting. I initially wanted to do like a weather forecaster as a joke, but I felt like that didn't properly convey what I meant by predictability. So when we're looking at predictability in a sprint context, we're trying to predict the number of points that we would be able to accomplish in a given sprint and reducing the number of like outliers that we encounter. So we can say things like, oh, the team's capacity is about 45 points per sprint. And so it would be a perfect 100% prediction if the team did exactly 45 points every time. But there are situations, especially for developers, where things don't quite go to plan, but it also happens to us designers too. We get new information from the business stakeholders saying, whoa, 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 hold up. We can't quite do this because of regulatory concerns. We just heard from this team that they're doing this, or we need to integrate with this vendor. Oh, we're using a different tool. The, the list just goes on and on. Um, but one thing that I did see for predictability is a dovetail chart, and it just looks like this. Got your normal axis. Um, let's see. This would be some kind of measure of productivity or um, points, rather. So point, and then again, um, time. And the dovetail is aptly named because it looks like a dovetail where you got this center line and a slowly curving line on the top and a slowly curving line on the bottom. So this top line right here, I'm just gonna give that a slightly different color. This top line right here would be your estimates. So you think you can get this much work done in this amount of time, and then this one would be how much work did you actually do in that time. And so as time goes on, the amount of stuff that's still estimated is decreasing, as well as your list of to-dos. And in a real life example of this chart, you may have some variations here, but we all know it just eventually hits zero. There's no more to do. There's nothing else to estimate. So those are the three items that I'm going to put in this particular frame. And I'm going to take out my notes and my guidelines because I don't need them anymore. Just make some minor adjustments. Get the right items here. Bring this up a little bit. And unfortunately, I got a little bit of the canvas. Hang on. Get rid of the canvas and try again. There we go. And then the other chart here. Bring that up below and over. Okay. Get those two layers for this one. And bring it up just a little. Now, in the spirit of not just displaying everything with images, I'm going to add a little text as well. So back to the pen. So this pen that I'm using is one that I found on the Clip Studio Asset Store. I like it. It's a pretty smooth pen to use. Um, so let's see. This one is Quality Score. This one is Velocity, and this one is Predictability. Isn't that the worst? You run out of space. Slide this over. One more adjustment. It's okay though. I'm going to shrink it down a little. All right. That'll do. That'll do. Okay, I guess not. Gotta fill in the gaps. Hmm. That's weird. And like I mentioned, I'm very new to this, so I'm still learning how all of it works. Just gonna make a new layer, I guess, down here. That ain't quite do it. Oh, mm, weird. Oh, I've been doing it outside of these lines the whole time. All right, that makes sense. In Clip Studio Paint, if you have something selected, it's gonna also apply a mask, a temporary mask to the layer that you're working on. And so if you do anything out here, like I was, it's not gonna apply or changes. There we go. All right. So I'm happy enough with that layer. And just taking a look at Notepad again. So we had this frame, which I was going to be talking about. Um, the, the first one was the database lines. And yeah, this one will be about database lines. The prior frame was just going to be introduced in the video. And so this next one is about the process. And I have some notes in here just talking about dandelions because I use the idea of our process sometimes being like anarchy, uh, dandelions just scattering in the wind, everybody doing their own thing. And so as I'm thinking about this, I think of a nice Gerald scene, um, perhaps in the external garden. This this particular scene that I had was derived from what I want my backyard to be like. I like to have a little pergola with grapes hanging off of it, a little piece of oven that could potentially go hot enough to do some glass blowing out. It's one of my hobbies, and you probably saw that on the schedule. I did some glass blowing this previous weekend, made some cups, so those turned out pretty nice. I was experimenting with stencils, just applying the colors in a certain pattern. Um, so yeah, let's see here. Do we have a process having established rules and procedures about the work that you do? Um, Talking about four different validations. Uh, Four different validations. We do the user interface validation, making sure it matches the mockups that we're doing. We also have branding guidelines that we have to abide by. And we're reviewing the implementation of what the what the developers did from our mockups, because sometimes the technical aspects of it doesn't quite match up with the design, and so we have to negotiate those differences. And then the final one being about accessibility, which is very important when you work at some of the larger companies because of the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, and the penalties for violating those can be rather severe. So, um, I'm just thinking about how I want to communicate that. Most it's going to be mostly words for this, but we can do a pretty general like fields and planes view. So I'm just going to start a new folder here, and as usual, start with my white base layer and thinking fields. I did go on this trip to Hawaii 1 year, and it was a very fun trip. Um, I made a fish out there, and I'm just pulling up the image from back then on my phone. I took lots of pictures, and let me see here. So as we were driving along in Hawaii, there were a ton of like beautiful scenery out there with the mountains. Yeah, I like to use one of them here. And got a lot of photos on this thing. Ah, yes. Here we go. Okay. So just using that as a reference, we have the pencil brush here. Now I'm just going to lower the opacity a little bit on a new layer. Just to suit the pencilness of it. And I'll do that later. So we got a center line right, right along here. A little bit too high. Yeah, there we go. Just erase that. There's this general idea about photography. It's called the rule of thirds, and I would love to have a tool to make it in here, but this is somewhat approximate to that rule of thirds. Um, so we got the mountain range, and then we got the clouds that were going along here, and we only covered a little part of the mountain. Some variation. Add a little bit here, a little bit here. So I'm just roughly sketching stuff to get an idea for the composition. I don't want to commit too much to painting because, again, there's always going to be these little adjustments that you want to make before you're happy. Okay, that's reasonable. And then a cloud right up here. It's got a little bit of a hole in it. No dip here. And then some scattered clouds over here. and a couple of scatter ones along here. All right. And then the field itself is lovely, but it goes almost all the way up here. And then we add some ridges to the mountain itself that we can see. A little bit of greenery going up. And then we have, so it's not all flat out there. There's some bits of depth, and you want to make sure you capture that in the background scenery. So down here, not quite that sharp, not quite that short. Yeah, something like that. Then there's this interesting line of brushes over here. And then we got a whole bunch of grass coming up from here. I'm going to bring this whole top level down just a little bit. And then bring this bottom part up. Yep. So like I said, sometimes I kind of make little adjustments, and it's always easier to make these little adjustments early on. And this is something that I might touch on in a future video about the cost of making a change at different stages of a project. When you're fixing problems in your mentality or in the requirements at the very, very beginning of the project, the discovery stages, is trivial. You can just spend a couple minutes on it, change the idea, have at it. But once you start putting that into a Scrum team backlog, things start to get a little bit more expensive. Then once you started the development on those, they change in the cost of pivoting is going to increase quite a bit, and it gets even worse if it's already in production. Now, of course, there's caveats to that, such as A/B testing, but you've already accounted for the cost upfront. Um, so I have a general idea of what I want to do with this particular scene here, and now it's time for me to start blocking in some colors. Switch to my general brush here. And I usually like to do a little what they call underpainting. Put your sketch layer on top, reduce the opacity a little bit, and then just go to town on blocking out the different colors. So this back area where the mountain is going to be darker than anything else. It's not the layer that I want to be working on. I wrong layer. All right, that's better. So we're starting from roughly down there. And this is where I make use of my lasso tool the most, just to lock in really big sections and fill in some gaps where I feel like they're needed. So this section right here, I added a little bit of greenery, and it's pretty light in color. So I'm going to do something like this and add it right in on top. Just add all of the greens with air quotes. Alrighty. And then this little set of brush here. It's a little darker than this oval lines. So something like this should work. Yeah, I'm just noticing that there's a couple of other areas kind of like it in that photo that I took. See, I think this greenery could benefit from going a little further over here. And then we got the nice blue sky here. Fill in some of the gaps here. And fill this gap in here. And there's some variations to this rock range. So I'm just going to block in some of those. Will be a little bit lighter. And as things get further away, the less detail you want to give them. There we go. That's not looking too bad. All right. And um, see, this is also part of the clouds here. So I'll do just a straight up white. and then some blobs. Get a little bit of pattern here, just to make it interesting. And I do these sketches all the time, but when I block in the colors and do line art on top of that, I don't have to stick to this sketch, and that's perfectly okay. Um, because the sketch is there to give you an idea of what you want to do, not necessarily what you have to do. Just add some fun little cloud streaks in there. Just have a little bit of fun with it. You can't take anything too seriously in life. You'll just end up burning out if you do. Alright, that's looking pretty decent. So I'm gonna get rid of my sketching. And then we'll break out my friend the texture brush and see. We'll take this color here, the grass, and I'm just gonna apply it on a new layer. That way we have a underpaint and a overpaint. So the underpaint is to set the tone and fill in the gaps, and the overpaint applies the details. And this is just me talking entirely out of my own experience. I've never gone to art school, so I don't really know all of the terminologies and that kind of stuff. I'm just winging it, but that's what makes this whole thing so fun. Alrighty. In fact, I think I might try out a different brush. I was playing around with a Sumi E brush, like those Japanese painting calligraphy. I can't say that word that well. Calligraphy brushes, and so might be interesting for making some grass textures. Yeah, I could probably find something on the asset store that um, is like a stamp. It can just do all of this for me, but I just don't feel like there's a whole lot of fun in that. If you want to save time, you can do that. I'm just having a little bit of fun talking to you guys, doing my thing, doing it all at my own pace. And some little grasses here and there. We might want to rank down the color just a little bit because we have this depth over here. So let's be just a little bit darker for the line. Yeah. And lower that just a bit. Lasso tool. Fill in some gaps here. But it's okay to have a little bit of a gap because it does provide a bit of an outline. All right, back to the regularly scheduled grass creation. Yeah, I'm just gonna add a little color variation. Oop, that's a little red. Might not be might not see too much of it on the screen as it is. It's pretty close, but I'm just doing it to provide a little bit of texture to the background. Okay, a third color for little patches of dark. All right, that's coming along pretty nice. Go back to our gel brush or our texture brush and add some character to this shrubbery right here. So get the color of that and darken it a little bit. Just get some general idea of these shapes. Then switch over to my other brush and we're gonna apply the same kind of technique that we did, just a little bit differently. Hmm, I'm not feeling it. Let's see. How about this dry ink? Test it on a clear area. Nah. Not my work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, right now all we're doing is applying a little texture. We're not doing a whole lot of details just yet. Yeah. Okay. Now we do the detail. Let's zoom in a little. We got mostly smaller plants on this side. Couple little lines to define them a little. Hmm, that might be too strong. Try something different. That's the beauty of digital painting. You can always try something different. With the traditional, you're a little bit limited by how much paint you can play with. Decrease the size a little. So for the bottom part, we want to kind of curl up a little. Hmm, maybe we don't. Just gonna add some shape defining ridges. Now I'm gonna cut into it a little bit with this. See how it looks. It's interesting. I'll say for sure. All right, on to the mountain range. The photo that I'm referencing is from when we were in Kula, Kula, lovely place. We were in Maui to do the glass blowing and to visit my sister out there for a vacation. It's nice to get away in the winter. Oh, two similar colors there. Yeah, there we go. Just add a little variation here. All right, cool. Not looking too bad. Okay, the clouds have to have a little bit of definition too. So we're going to make little fluffy regions. Hmm, not feeling that. That's okay. A little bit too dark for my taste. Yeah, just try to open up little holes in areas where the clouds might be a little um, darker or a little further in the back. And as we're coming up on this mountain range, it's going to be a little bit less intense because of the whole rain shadow effect. So I'm actually going to bring it down a little bit more towards the mountain color. Yeah. Add just a little bit of interest. The same with the surrounding areas. Punch a couple of little holes. Okay. I am going to make use of a blender here. With the clouds, it's important to not get too caught up on the hard, distinct lines within the cloud itself. As far as the cloud and its uh, background, that's okay. And just smudging a little bit down here. uh, take care of that in the other layer here. Hmm. Then I do have a little brush that I can use here for some dots and lay that on top. Just adding bits here and there. Then I'm just gonna blur this final bit here a little more. Hmm. I say that looks pretty good, don't you? I'm happy with that. And I've been streaming for almost an hour and a half. So I'm gonna call it a day. I hope you all enjoyed it and tune in on Wednesday. I'm gonna keep doing some more scenes and have a pleasant rest of your day, rest of your night, wherever you may be.